December 29th of 1890 was a date in history that should really resonate with Americans, and people should remember it. And that's why I want to talk about it, because that was when Wounded Knee occurred. And that was up in South Dakota. And it was Minneconjou, Bigfoot's clan of Lakota Sioux that were camped there. And there was a massacre, and it was a major massacre. A man named Colonel James Forsyth had surrounded the camp. And what they were upset about, Colonel was the ghost dance, right? The ghost dance was sweeping the country of the Plains Indian. And basically what it was a time that they believed, the Plains Indians, that there would be a resurgence of native rule, native people being in charge, and that all the white settlers would be buried under 30 feet of dirt. And that if they wore their ghost dance shirts, that the bullets could not hurt them. So they were doing this kind of dance throughout the reservation, as you can imagine, because your buffalo are gone, and everyone is in reservations at this point in time. So they were trying to break this up. And what occurred on the 29th is that, first of all, they had set up the government, the 7th Cavalry, right? This is who Forsyth was the colonel of. 7th Cavalry was Custer's cavalry, which got wiped out in 1876 at the Battle of Little Bighorn, and some feel like this might have been retribution for that. So they were going around through the entire camp, through Bigfoot's camp, trying to collect all the guns. And they didn't want to give up the guns, and I can understand that. Bigfoot did give up the guns, his gun, and a few others did. And then they started going from tent to tent to collect everything. And a man, this is what they think started, named Black Coyote, who was deaf but had a new Winchester. He didn't want to give up his gun, and they started taking it away from him, and it discharged. And when it discharged, that saw everything happen. And so in a period of just minutes, really, there was carnage everywhere. So on the hilltop, they put these Hotchkiss guns that could shoot 50 rounds a minute, right? So they were devastating, big artillery guns. And you have all these soldiers that have surrounded it. So somewhere between 150 and 300 individuals, natives, were killed, and 25 of the cavalry were killed from the 7th Cavalry. And out of that group, and we don't know for sure, we think it's probably closer to 300, but out of that group, we had more than half of them, women and children, were killed. In fact, women and children who got away and ran to a nearby ravine were shot down by these big guns on the hill. And so you have this huge massacre, and even the people in charge, General Miles, realized this was a problem, right? This was dereliction of duty to have this kind of carnage happening, and he relieved Forsyth of his duty 6 days after the event. But he went to court, and they said nope, he's okay, and they put him back in charge. Also, at that time, you had somebody like Frederick Remington came out, and he did drawings and then did paintings, a very famous one for Harper's Weekly, which, depicts what was going on. And in his depiction, it's the cavalry who are, upright and standing off this, native revolt. When in reality, what it was is they were trying to get the guns. They didn't like the ghost dance, and, something happened, and that can happen. And then everyone just complete, turmoil. And after that time frame, 20 of the soldiers got Medal of Honors. And, the graveyard that was made for Bigfoot's band is they just dug a big mass grave 3 days later after the event, because there was this huge blizzard that came in. They came and they just threw them all together in one big cemetery, one big grave. So I think it's important to remember American history. And this was the last big, they call it a battle. Some would just call it a massacre. Some call it whatever you want to call it. It was the last big event that happened in that time from 1890. That would be considered probably by most to be the last battle of the Indian Wars. It's a date we should remember, December 29th, 1890.